What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Enjoying the Review. I'm your host, Incomparable Zach Jones, and on tonight's show, I'm going to be reviewing and recapping The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 5, entitled Feel Her Love. And before I get going, why don't you let me feel your love by subscribing to the YouTube channel, leaving me a thumbs up, positive reviews, comments, all that good stuff. You can also listen in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice, and you can follow me on social media, either on Twitter at Zach Jones Live, that's ZachJonesLive, or over on Blue Sky at Enjoying the Review. All right, guys, let's get into it. So another week has gone by, and yet another very solid episode of The Last of Us, I'm happy to report. In fact, I think I'm going to give this bad boy an 8 out of 10. Which is, I think, what I gave last week's as well. So I feel like they're keeping up the quality. This episode, I thought, had some good action, some good tension, some good horror. Also, some really good pacing. I thought this episode really zipped by, and really kept me attuned the whole time. I never felt like I was kind of like dropping off at any point. I thought it did a really good job in that respect. I also noticed some cool visuals. I thought the scene, spoilers by the way for this whole thing, the hallway scene where Ellie encounters the spore people, if you will, where they're stuck in the walls and they're breathing in oxygen and like exhaling spores. Just a really cool visuals. It's funny. I've played both Last of Us games once, and like I remember all the major story beats, but not necessarily like every single thing about the games. But as I'm watching this show, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that from the game. I remember that scene from the game. And at times, I actually think the show kind of adheres almost too closely to the visual identity of the show. Like I remember towards the end of this episode when she's in that hallway and like the alarm goes on or whatever, or she hits the power switch or whatever, and the red lights come on. I'm like, oh yeah, that's from the game exactly. But as far I remember, I think the game does have like the spore people attached to the walls and everything. I don't remember necessarily them like breathing out the spores. Maybe they did, but I thought here it looked really cool. I thought that was great. It did make me think, though. It's kind of weird how people are affected so differently by the cordyceps. How you have just kind of your regular zombie-esque creature, and then I guess if they're infected long enough, they form the thing over their face and they become a clicker. But then some of them get become bloaters somehow, and then some of them get stuck in the wall. Like if this guy is stuck in the wall long enough, will he eventually grow and become a bloater? I don't think so, because I think these guys have been in the wall for quite a while. So like and then the stalker guys, like how is there different strains of cordyceps at this point? Is that why it's making so many different types of creatures? I just I get it from a video game standpoint that you want to have like different enemy types, but at the same time, like I kind of want to know the lore behind it. Like, why do they affect certain people in certain ways and turn them into this thing, and then these people into totally different versions? Like there has to be some sort of explanation, I would think, but it's nothing they're probably going to get into, but I would find it interesting. I didn't have like a lot of criticisms of this episode. I think one of them I have is maybe a little convenient that Jesse shows up and exactly where he does. And like, I think he kind of shows up in the game. Well, I know he does show up in the game, after they go on to Seattle too, and helps out. I don't know if he saved the day in quite this way. I can't quite remember. But here, like, the fact that he would, be able to track him down, and then just right at the moment when they were about to die, he saves the day. Seems a little far-fetched, but it's fine. I'll allow it, but maybe a little convenient. Last week, when I introduced Isaac to the show at the beginning, that in a flashback, they said that was 2018. So my thinking was like, oh, the whole thing probably started like not too far before then. And maybe they said this in season 1 and I just completely spaced it. But I think they mentioned in this episode that like the whole cordyceps thing happened in 2003. So like, and I believe they intimated that the current day that Ellie is in is like 2029. So it's been like 26 years of the apocalypse. So that's interesting. Gives a little context that I certainly didn't remember. If they said it before, then they probably did. But no, like I said, very solid episode. I think. Again, the only minor criticisms is the convenience of Jesse showing up when he did, and something I mentioned in a lot of these episodes is I think from they take shots directly out of the video game, and I don't know if they need to quite adhere to the source material quite so closely. There's also things in this episode I remember where I'm like, oh, I remember this from the game. It didn't happen exactly this way in the game, but it happened. That sort of thing. So I'm going to start the recap of the episode, and I'll give my thoughts and commentary as I go along. So we start off with a WLF sergeant named Elise Park being interviewed about a mission gone wrong. She sent one of her men, Leon, to investigate a hospital basement, and he became infected, and he tells her on the radio, there's something in the air, and it's causing us to infect it. So he's like, you need to seal me and my team in here. So she makes that tough decision, and she does. She seals him in. We find out as like the woman interviewing leaves the room, she's like, sorry about your son. So this Leon character is her son, and she made that sacrifice. And we actually get a glimpse of him. He's one of the guys he's one of the spore people in the wall breathing out the spores, and you can see the L Park name tag on him. So now, and I figure, because I watched the little like behind the scenes thing at the end of this episode, and Craig Mazin, I think, is the showrunner. He mentioned that like these guys have probably been in the wall for something like 10 years or something. So I think that interview, it didn't just happen to happen several, probably 10 years ago or whatever. At least I think he said that. Maybe I'm wrong. So back in the present, Dina listens to the WLF soldiers on the radio and tries to plot a safe route for her and Ellie to get to this hospital they're trying to get to. So she's kind of marking down the routes and the positions of the soldiers. Her and Ellie have this conversation where she explains how she's like using triangulating based on the positions of the soldiers and stuff, and like Ellie, she's not good at math, and they have this little fun back and forth. Also, Ellie got the power onto the theater, which I remember was like a mission in the game, but she just did it, So while Dina's plotting the route, Ellie goes and explores the theater. She finds a guitar. This scene probably could have got cut. Like, she briefly plays the guitar, and she starts singing the song about like, what if I lost you or something. Like, it's almost like she's writing a song about Dina or something, but that it doesn't last long, and then it's back out. And part of me was like, I don't know if we learned much in that scene. Probably could have been cut, but it's fine. It's whatever. So Dina finds a route to get past the soldiers, but it involves them going through a long building that she can tell the soldiers are avoiding. So they're like it's probably full of infected, but it's their best route to get past the soldiers. Ellie is surprised how much the soldiers talk on the radio, because she's like, wouldn't the Seraphites, the scarred people, wouldn't they listen in and find out what's the score? And so Dina posits that these guys are probably like purposefully Luddites and kind of reject technology. They're kind of probably like the Amish, from the old world, And it turns out that is true. According to, again, in the behind the scenes thing from the showrunner, he mentions that that's what it is. They're like that. So Ellie and Dina head out, and Ellie has a line where she's like, "So what are you going to name the baby?" And Dina jokes, "Oh, if it's a girl, Ellie. If it's a boy, Elijah." And Ellie's like, "What? That's a good name." So I don't remember what they named the baby in the video game. Maybe it was Elijah. So that's probably what it'll end up being. I don't know. Unless that, I don't know if she does a thing where she's like, "No, I'm going to name it Joel" or something. I don't know. It's been too long. They see a mural, a painting of the Scar's prophet on a wall, and it says "Feel her love." But then, like, the WLF soldiers were like, "Feel this, MFers," or something on it, and then there's like a bunch of dead Seraphites underneath. Dina tells Ellie about the first person she ever killed. She said she was living, I think, somewhere in California. She went out to play. When she came back, a raider had killed her sister and her mother, and so she killed that raider. Dina says it would not have mattered to her, like if her family had killed the raider's family, like a Joel type situation, that she would still want revenge. And that if the raider had gotten away, she would have hunted him forever. So, she's basically telling Ellie, like, "Look, I get where you're coming from, and I agree with it." But she does ask Ellie, she's like, "You need to decide, like, do you want to go back or do you want to keep going? Like, I'm fine either way, but, I want to check in with you." And of course, Ellie wants to keep going. So Dina and Ellie enter into this long building, kind of just looks like an office building, and then connected to like a warehouse or something. Dina warns Ellie that shooting must be a last resort because it will attract the WLF soldiers. So she's like, "We take our knives in there. First, we try to kill anything in there with knives. If we get there's too many, then our next course of action is run away. And if we have absolutely zero choice, then we shoot. But it has to be last resort." Ellie and Dina enter a room, and they find out, like, first they're like, "Oh, there's a stalker. Well, we'll flank it." And then they look again, and it's like there's like another one. And then they start hearing more noise, and they find out they're surrounded by stalkers. So Ellie sees that there's like a power switch behind a gate, and so she tells Dina to run, lock herself in there, so she can get bit. She'll stay out and try to, kill off the stalkers. So Dina locks herself behind the gate, and then they have no choice. They're basically forced to use their guns because there's just too overwhelming odds. But the stalkers, they knock down Ellie and they start trying to rip her apart. They also get on top of the cage that Dina's in, and they start like ripping into it, and they're like kind of making headway. Dina runs out of bullets. I think Ellie's gun gets knocked out of her hand. She's about to get ripped to shreds by these stalkers when all of a sudden some shooting occurs. Stalkers are getting put down, and wouldn't you know it, in the nick of time, Jesse shows up and he saves the day. Um, and they kind of do this visual trick where like Ellie's down and like with the light and everything, like Jesse's silhouette almost resembles Joel, that sort of thing. So they run out of the building, but with all the shooting, they have indeed attracted the WLF soldiers. So they start running, and the soldiers are shooting at them, and then they see a park nearby. So Jesse tells them, hey, let's slip into the park and lose them in there. And as soon as they go in the park, the WLF soldiers back off because, like, there's something in the park. Jesse tells Ellie and Dina that he didn't come alone. Tommy is somewhere in the city. And he found the theater they were in, and then he found Dina's map. So that's what led him there. Which, by the way, you would kind of think Dina would have taken the map with her instead of just like committing it to memory or whatever, but who knows? So all of a sudden they start hearing whistling. So they get down. This is, of course, the Seraphites. And they witness a Seraphite simultaneously hang and disembowel with a hook one of the WLF soldiers. So, basically shows what they did to all those guys that were hanging in the building in the previous episode. Very gruesome. But then the Seraphites, they're apparently good at spotting people. They spot the group, and they shoot Dina in the leg with an arrow. So Jesse carries her off in his arms, and they decide. Ellie decides, she wants to buy them time or whatever. So they split off. And Ellie splits off in the other direction. Ellie ends up hiding in a hollow tree, and then to escape the Seraphites. And she sees in the distance, she sees the hospital that she's trying to find. Right. She exits the park, but then immediately a WLF soldiers has like a dog, and the dog senses her. And by the way, in the video game, the dogs are pain in the ass, and you end up like having to like kill a bunch of dogs in the game, but very, very difficult to avoid them. But she kind of narrowly avoids the dog, and she escapes into the hospital. And the soldier's just like, oh, the dog must have seen a raccoon or, some sort of rodent or something. So Ellie ends up finding Nora in the hospital and asks her where Abby is. And Nora has this bit of dialogue where she's basically like, look, I'm sorry you had to like witness it, but I'm glad it happened. And basically Joel deserved it. And she has like this solution. She's like washing some bandages or something. And so she throws the liquid in Ellie's face and runs away screaming, which of course alerts the other soldiers in the building. They start shooting at Ellie and chasing after her. But Ellie, she's single-minded. She wants to get Nora, so she's chasing her. And again, when I saw this, I was like, oh yeah, now I vaguely remember like chasing after her in the hospital in the game. She ends up chasing her down an elevator shaft and ends up on story B2, which was referenced in the very beginning of the episode as the level that they sealed off because of the spores, or because of the airborne particulates. So sure enough, she finds the infected that are stuck in the wall, including Leon Park. And again, I thought this looked really, really cool with just all the growth on the walls. These guys, spitting out spores. The makeup effects on these guys, very cool. Looked very cool. So she hits a electric switch on the wall. It turns the hallway red again. Lit up a thing in my mind where it's like, oh yeah, I kind of remember these visuals too. And she finds Nora, who is coughing because she ingested the spores. So she's going to, of course, turn infected. And Nora realizes that Ellie is, the immune person that went to the hospital, and I believe it was Salt Lake in the first season. And she tells Ellie that Joel killed everybody in the hospital, including the only man who could have made a cure out of her, which was Abby's father. And Ellie tells her that she knows that already. And in the preview for next episode, and I knew this was going to come at some point, so all you Pedro Pascal fans, next episode is going to be the flashback episode with Ellie and Joel, in which I'm sure, we'll get an explanation here of how she knows, why she was upset with Joel at the beginning of the season, that sort of thing, Nora refuses to tell Ellie where Abby is. And you get the sense that, she just keeps saying no. And I got the sense that it wasn't just out of her loyalty to Abby, but, she legitimately, I think, is a person that wants to stop the cycle of violence. I believe even in the episode where Joel was killed, she had reservations with Abby's attitude and how crazy Abby was getting. So what does Ellie do? She, of course, grabs a metal pipe and starts savagely beating Nora. And then as the episode ends, we get what I believe is a flashback rather than just a dream sequence or something. But we get a flash of Joel waking up Ellie, and she's very happy to see him. So I'm guessing that's just going to be kind of the beginning of the next episode, which is, of course, going to be a flashback-centric episode with Joel and Ellie, which I'm looking forward to. So, yeah, guys, for me, another very solid episode. No major complaints. So, fingers crossed, man. Last of Us people keep it rolling. I thought this was very strong. But what did you guys think? And I'm especially curious for you guys watching that have also played the games. How do you feel? Do you think that maybe the show is sticking a little too closely to the source material? Because, in season 1, we at least got the Nick Offerman episode, which was a story not explored in the game. Or if it was, maybe it was alluded to by letters you can find and stuff. Because they do have that in the games. I'm not sure, but we certainly didn't actually see it in the game. And so far this season, we haven't gotten an episode like that where it's oh, this is something we totally didn't get in the game. So far, every episode has been a hodgepodge of mostly stuff we got in the game, maybe a little different twist on it, that sort of thing. But mostly stuff we got in the game to one extent or another. But still, very solid episode. I liked it very much, and I'm looking forward to next week. But guys, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. So if you will, please subscribe to the channel. Please leave me a thumbs up. Please leave me a comment or two. Please positive review to the show. You can also listen in audio form on your podcast catcher of choice. And you can follow me on social media, either on Twitter at Zach Jones Live, ZachJonesLive, or on Blue Sky at Enjoying the Review. But guys, until next time, I hope you're enjoying the review. Bye, guys.